In exactly 47 seconds of absolute silence, FBI Director Kash Patel would accidentally confirm the biggest cover-up in American history. Representative Thomas Massie had done what no one else dared. He named the number 100,000 files. Documents containing names, dates, locations, and evidence connecting Jeffrey Epstein to some of the most powerful people on Earth. Patel's response wasn't a denial. It wasn't an explanation. It was silence. Complete, devastating, career-ending silence. The cameras captured every frozen second. The committee room held its breath. And 47 million Americans watching live witnessed the exact moment the FBI director's face revealed what his words never could. The cover-up was real. And Thomas Massie had just proven it. Thursday morning, January 23, 2025, at 10:47 a.m. House Judiciary Committee hearing room. Representative Thomas Massie sat 3 seats from the center, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed a thick manila folder that would change everything. The folder contained internal FBI correspondence that the Bureau had fought desperately to keep hidden from public view. 47 million Americans had tuned into the live stream. Social media platforms displayed the hearing on their front pages. News networks had interrupted regular programming. Everyone understood that today's oversight hearing on FBI operations would be different. FBI Director Kash Patel sat at the witness table, his navy blue suit pressed to perfection, his FBI lapel pin catching the harsh committee room lights. He had survived 2 hours of questioning about controversial personnel decisions, immigration enforcement priorities, and resource allocation. He appeared confident, controlled, prepared for anything the committee might throw at him. He wasn't prepared for Thomas Massie. Representative Thomas Massie wasn't like other members of Congress. The Kentucky Republican had built his reputation on asking questions that made everyone uncomfortable, regardless of party affiliation. He had engineering degrees from MIT. He approached congressional oversight like a scientist approaches an experiment. Hypothesis. Evidence. Conclusion. His hypothesis today was simple. The FBI was deliberately suppressing the Epstein files. His evidence was sitting in that manila folder. His conclusion would come from Patel's own mouth. For 6 weeks, Massie's staff had filed Freedom of Information requests, interviewed former Bureau employees, and obtained documents through channels that FBI leadership didn't know existed. They had mapped the entire Epstein file system. They knew exactly how many documents existed. They knew which ones had been released. And they knew which ones were being deliberately hidden. Kash Patel had testified before Congress 17 times since becoming FBI director. He had developed a reputation for smooth deflection, bureaucratic doublespeak, and an almost supernatural ability to answer questions without actually saying anything. His technique was simple. Acknowledge the question. Express concern. Promise to look into it. Move on. It had worked every single time. But Massie had watched those 17 hearings. He had studied Patel's patterns. He had identified the weakness that no one else had exploited. Patel couldn't maintain composure when confronted with specific numbers he couldn't dispute. The Epstein files had become the most controversial intelligence matter in FBI history. When Jeffrey Epstein died in his Manhattan jail cell in August 2019, he left behind a sprawling network of documents, recordings, flight logs, and witness statements that allegedly connected wealthy and powerful individuals to horrific crimes against minors. The FBI had taken custody of these materials. They had promised transparency. They had assured Congress and the American public that anyone implicated would face justice regardless of status or connections. 6 years later, almost nothing had been released. The Biden administration had blamed classification requirements. The Trump administration had promised full disclosure, but delivered only a handful of heavily redacted documents. Victim advocates had grown increasingly frustrated. Conspiracy theories flourished in the absence of official information. Kash Patel's nomination as FBI director had been sold partly on his promise to release the files. During his confirmation hearing, he had testified under oath that transparency would be his priority. He had looked senators directly in the eyes and promised that the American people deserved to know the truth. That was 11 months ago. Since then, exactly 0 new Epstein documents had been released. Every congressional request had been denied on national security grounds. Every Freedom of Information Act request had been rejected. The files remained locked in FBI vaults, their contents known only to a handful of Bureau officials who had been sworn to secrecy. Thomas Massie had obtained internal FBI communications documenting exactly how many files existed. The number was staggering. And today, he was going to make Patel acknowledge it on live television. At precisely 10:47 a.m., Chairman Jim Jordan yielded 5 minutes to the gentleman from Kentucky. Massie adjusted his microphone with deliberate calm. He didn't look at Patel immediately. Instead, he opened his manila folder and spread 3 documents across the desk in front of him, arranging them so the FBI letterhead was visible to the cameras positioned behind him. Director Patel, Massie began, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who already knew the answers to every question he was about to ask. I want to discuss the Epstein files with you today. The effect on Patel was immediate but subtle. His shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly beneath his suit jacket. His fingers, which had been loosely interlaced on the witness table, pressed together until the knuckles whitened slightly. His expression remained professionally neutral, but trained observers could detect the microtension around his jaw. Of course, Representative Massie, Patel replied, his voice steady but lacking the casual confidence he had displayed during earlier questioning. I'm happy to discuss our handling of those materials within the bounds of what I can share in an open session. Massie nodded slowly, as if he had expected exactly that response. Director, during your confirmation hearing, you testified that transparency regarding the Epstein materials would be a priority of your administration. Is that correct? That is correct, Representative. And you've been FBI Director for approximately 11 months now. Is that also correct? That is correct. Massie paused, allowing the silence to stretch for 3 full seconds before continuing. Director Patel, how many documents related to Jeffrey Epstein and his associates are currently in FBI custody? The question landed like a thunderclap in the quiet hearing room. Patel's face flickered with something that looked remarkably like panic before his professional mask reasserted itself. Representative Massie, I would need to consult with my staff to provide an accurate number. The Epstein materials are extensive and span multiple classification levels and storage facilities. It was a textbook deflection. Acknowledge the question. Express limitation. Promise follow-up. Move on. But Massie had anticipated this exact answer. Let me help refresh your memory, Director. Massie lifted the first document from his desk, holding it at an angle that allowed the cameras to capture the FBI seal and classification markings. This is an internal FBI memorandum dated September 14, 2024, prepared by the Records Management Division for your office. It provides a complete inventory of Epstein-related materials in Bureau custody. Patel's eyes locked onto the document. His Adam's apple moved as he swallowed involuntarily. According to this memorandum, which was prepared specifically for you, Director, the FBI currently holds custody of approximately 100,000 documents, recordings, photographs, and related materials connected to Jeffrey Epstein and his network. Massie let the number hang in the air. 100,000 files, Director. That's the number your own bureau provided to your office. Does that sound accurate? The silence that followed would become the most analyzed moment in congressional history. Patel's mouth opened slightly, then closed. His eyes darted to staff sitting in the gallery behind him, searching for rescue that wouldn't come. His right hand moved toward the water glass in front of him, then stopped mid-motion as if he had forgotten why he was reaching for it. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. Then 30. The hearing room had gone completely silent. Committee members leaned forward in their seats. Staff members had stopped typing on their laptops. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath, keeping their lenses locked on Patel's frozen face. At the 35-second mark, Chairman Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, seemingly preparing to intervene. But Massie raised one finger almost imperceptibly, signaling that he wasn't finished. 40 seconds. 45. Patel's face had transformed from confident to something approaching desperate. His carefully maintained composure had cracked like ice under pressure. Beads of sweat had appeared at his hairline, visible under the bright committee room lights. At exactly 47 seconds, Massie spoke again. Director Patel, your silence is an answer. Let me ask a different question. The FBI director visibly exhaled, apparently relieved that the excruciating pause had ended. Of these 100,000 files in FBI custody, how many have been released to the public since you became director? Representative Massie, Patel began, his voice notably less steady than before. The release of classified materials involves complex legal and national security considerations that. How many, Director? Give me a number. Patel's jaw tightened. I would need to verify the exact. The answer is 0, Director. Massie's voice had risen, carrying an edge of controlled fury that silenced the room. 100,000 files. 11 months. 0 releases. That's not transparency, Director. That's a cover-up. Patel's professional facade finally shattered. Representative, that characterization is completely unfair and ignores the complex legal framework governing the release of sensitive materials that could compromise ongoing investigations and national security equities. Ongoing investigations? Massie's voice carried a dangerous calm. Director, Jeffrey Epstein died 6 years ago. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted 3 years ago. What investigations could possibly justify hiding 100,000 documents from the American people? I'm not prepared to discuss operational details in an open. You're not prepared to tell the truth, Director. The accusation hung in the air like an explosion. Those files contain names. Names of powerful people. People who visited Epstein's island. People who flew on his planes. People who knew exactly what was happening to those children and did nothing. And you're protecting them. Patel shot forward in his seat, his composure completely abandoned. That is an outrageous accusation, Representative. I have dedicated my career to law enforcement and justice, and I won't sit here and be accused of. Then release the files. The simple challenge stopped Patel mid-sentence. You have the authority, Director. The President promised transparency. You promised transparency. Release the files. Let the American people see the names. Unless there's a reason you don't want those names to become public. Patel's mouth opened and closed. His face had flushed deep crimson. His hands gripped the edge of the witness table so tightly that his knuckles had gone completely white. He had no answer. And everyone in that room knew exactly what that meant. The consequences were immediate and devastating. Within 30 minutes, the hashtag #ReleaseTheFiles was trending worldwide with 1.7 million tweets. Video clips of Patel's 47-second silence accumulated 23 million views across platforms before the hearing even concluded. Cable news networks split their screens, running the confrontation on loop while legal analysts provided real-time commentary. That silence told us everything we need to know, former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti told MSNBC. An FBI director who had nothing to hide would have immediately provided context or explanation. 47 seconds of silence is consciousness of guilt. Fox News, despite typically supporting the administration, ran the headline "Massie Corners Patel on Epstein Files, Director Struggles to Respond." By evening, victim advocacy groups had issued statements demanding Patel's resignation. 3 senators from his own party had called for an independent investigation into FBI handling of the Epstein materials. Perhaps most damaging, the White House issued a statement notable for what it didn't say. The president's press secretary expressed full confidence in Director Patel, but made no mention of the Epstein files or any timeline for their release. The message was clear to Washington insiders. The administration was already creating distance. Within 48 hours, anonymous FBI sources began leaking to reporters. The files exist exactly as Massie described, one senior official told The Washington Post. Everyone at the Bureau knows what's in them. And everyone knows why they haven't been released. Those 47 seconds of silence in a congressional hearing room revealed more than any press conference or official statement ever could. Thomas Massie didn't need to see the files himself. He didn't need to name the names. He simply asked a question that an honest FBI director could have answered immediately, and watched as Kash Patel proved through his own frozen silence that the cover-up was real. 100,000 documents remain locked in FBI custody. Victims continue to wait for justice. Powerful individuals continue to escape accountability. And an FBI director continues to serve despite being publicly exposed as the guardian of secrets that the American people have every right to know. Sometimes the most damning evidence isn't what someone says. It's what they can't bring themselves to say. And in 47 seconds of devastating silence, Kash Patel told the American people everything they needed to know about the Epstein files cover-up. If this video opened your eyes to the truth, smash that like button and subscribe to Redline Politics, where we cross the lines that mainstream media won't touch. Hit the notification bell because the next expose could reveal information that directly affects you and your family. Do you believe the Epstein files should be released to the public? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. This dramatized story is inspired by real events and public figures. All dialogue, events, and specific details are fictionalized for commentary and educational purposes. This content is not intended as defamation, but rather aims to examine themes of government transparency, institutional accountability, and the public's right to information.